Presented by Climate Power Education Fund. Does big oil care about our streets flooding or our home burning? Not according to an ExxonMobil top lobbyist.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. We were looking out for our shareholders.
They care about profits, not people. Learn more at polluters.exposed.
This episode is brought to you by HP. Whenever you do your best thinking, the HP Spectre X360 is ready when inspiration strikes. With power save for battery life and focus mode to multitask, you can do your best thinking whenever and wherever it happens. The HP Spectre X360 2-in-1 convertible PC with Windows 10 saves battery life for whenever an idea hits you. HP Spectre X360, a more thoughtful laptop.
Welcome to Western Contours Podcast, sharing experiences, providing insight, and looking for solutions to become better hunters. We talk gear, on and off season preparation, tips and tactics, conservation, and finding inspiration in the outdoors as sportsmen and women. Thank you for joining us as we share our love for all things Western hunting.
Yard pin is four dots.
Oh, we picked the right one.
Here's the thing. You think that's exactly what you think. You're like, all right, well, I'll just pick the it'd be like a cluster like this and say, okay, I'll pick the top one. It's inconsistent because some days it's like this, other days it's like that, others like that. So there is no picking one. And it got to the point where I was completely missing a block target at 40 yards.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
You want to talk about panic? Now, yeah, granted, for me, for what I do, everything I'm killing 99.9% of the time is under 20 anyway. But I like to shoot, for me, I shoot out to 60. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can shoot, well, my property allows me to shoot 120, but my eyes don't. Right. Because I don't have the cluster, but I have a fuzzy pin that there's nothing that I can do anything about. So now, I mean, I could still get a decent group at 60, but I can't shoot, I when I killed that mule deer, a number of years back, I still to this day remember, I practiced. I remember that deer, I pulled that bow back and that pin is just bing, this is crisp and steady. It was just like, bam, right there. And it just was money. And then you go to a few years after that where you cannot hit the block target at 40.
Yeah, I'm freaking out.
Oh, you're talking major panic. I went and saw my eye doctor too. And we were thinking about with the glasses, we were thinking about putting the bifocal on the inside. So when you're looking across your nose, the bifocal would be in here. Because basically it's the way your eye focuses, and I don't remember but he wanted to knock this prescription power down a little bit so it wasn't, but it just drove me nuts. And I was like, well, he changed a couple things and it got better. And over these past couple of years, it seems to have improved a little bit on its own. But man, it can really mess with you. So stay on top of that.
It's funny, right? Because we talk about, having confidence in ourself and in our gear. And man, what a kick in the nads. Because I'm looking at this dude and I'm that archer, right? Like if I'm not hitting, a 2-inch group at 80 yards, like if I'm not fletching to fletch, I'm freaking out. And now I find myself the last couple of days at the range, I'm going, it's a 6-inch group. We're okay.
Yeah.
We're killing an elk.
Well, yeah. I mean, and you're talking 80 yards, but I mean, that's the thing is when you, and it's not like you can, what does it say? No one cares, work harder. It's not like you can say, okay, I'm just going to bear down and really focus.
No.
Yeah, that doesn't work. You start to fall apart. And so then you realize, holy hell, and especially from day after day where you're like, okay, well, this is just a bad round. My head's not in. I'll just put the bow away. Let's not get any bad habits. No. And you come back the next day and you're like, okay, something's not right, because I just shot yesterday. I thought it was me. So I made a sight adjustment and I was shooting, and now I'm back, and now I'm hitting back where I was before. And man, you'll just spiral out of control quick.
Dude, it's
a good thing that you caught it early.
And I knew it, right? And I think that I should have jumped on it sooner, but we start getting to that point in age where, we're still resistant, that denial. So I'm like,
I'm 49. I'm still at that point. My buddy's 52, and we met for a couple beers there, and I asked him, because that's where I'm at. January I turned 50. I'm like, how is that possible? Like, that number's not real. So I asked him, I'm like, so how old are you? He's like 52. I'm like, dude, you can get the silver discount. He's like, fuck you. It's like, exactly.
Trick, that resistance is something else, dude. It's pretty funny.
At 30, it didn't hit me. At 40, I wasn't like, I don't give a crap. And now I'm at 49, and I'm like, this is real.
Yeah.
Like I'm 50 now. Like I'm old now. Like that's like
it sucks. This is really my first hit of it. With the eye thing, I'm like, this is my first hit of, kind of breaking that ridge to drop down the other side of the saddle. It kind of sucks.
Wait till it, you may have already done that. Wait till you go to get out of bed and you just step wrong. You're like, oh, and then you're like just locked up for the rest of the day. And you're like, how is this possible? How is this even?
A week ago, it was about a week. No. Yeah, it was about a week ago. I was at work, and I do heavy civil construction. I'm in aviation, and I had a crew working at LAX here, and I pull up to go check on the work, and we have these, they're called low-level barricades. They're just water-filled barricades that keep folks out of the area, and you can't have nothing big on the airfield. Anywho, they're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 gallons of water in them, right? And I used to be able to sling these things around with water and everything else. Dude, I bent down. I moved one out of the way, bent down, moved the other one. And it wasn't the next morning. That night, I told my wife, oh, man, my back is hurting. I'm not sure if it's just because I sit a lot at work. I'm not sure if it's just all the sitting, but I feel horrible. And then the next day, man, I woke up and I was like, holy shit, I don't want to get out of bed. And then I thought about it. I was like, you know what? It was from bending down and picking. I can't do that shit anymore.
We don't bounce anymore. No, we don't bounce.
Oh, I don't even want to fall. At this point, I don't even want to fall.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But I tell you what scared the shit out of me, man, when I'm shooting and I'm looking at those pins. And that's one of the things, that I've prided myself in for years, is that ability to, and maybe it's not my effective kill range, but that's where my confidence comes from, right? Is to be able to dial those groups in. That way, when I do drop into that 60 yards in, it's a no-brainer. And I'm finding myself holding that bow, and I shoot, man, my elk bow, it's 80 pounds. So time behind the string is huge for me. But now I'm sitting there with less reps because I'm having to hold and focus. I'm fatiguing earlier, and it's just like, holy.
And then you start second guessing. Then you start doubting, and then you go, okay, I'm going to let down. And you're like, what the hell? And then you come back and you're like, okay, that was a good one. And then it lands 4 inches, and you're like, that broke good. That should have broke. That broke right there. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Your eyes are deceiving you, buddy.
It's something else, man. But you know what? It is a very welcome reality check to some extent, though, because I do, when I first was fighting it, right, I would punch, bam, I'm using a thumb.
Oh yeah.
And I would punch, and I'm like, wait a minute, I wasn't in there. I know better than that. I gotta be okay with letting down, right? And I was fighting, and then I said, okay, I got to settle into this. So I started letting down, or I started, pulling the bow out so I could just hold longer, have it away from me, just to extend that, then bring it back up. So it was like, okay, this is sort of a good thing. I just got to get these eyes in check, but this is a good thing because it's checking my ass about the things I know I shouldn't do. So it kind of woke me up. So this is, you're talking from Friday to yesterday. And then yesterday I went to the range and I damn near couldn't do anything wrong. It was great. Even with the fuzz, right? I was like, okay, just settle in, take your time, allow the pin to flow. And that's one of the things that I was fighting is for whatever reason, because I couldn't focus, I wanted that pin to just hold like I was a brand new archer. And I'm like, I've been fucking shooting a bow for over 20 years. Like, let the pin float. And I just, okay, let it float. And like I said, the groups were larger, but it was like, they were in there. They were in there. You know, it was like,
they were still accurate. They just were less precise, which is okay. You're still killing them.
I got past 80 yards. I went to shit after 80 yards.
Well, I'll tell you right now, to this day, I still cannot shoot. So, you know, like the matrix targets where you've got just the different dots or whatever. I can't shoot dots. What I have to do is I have to take my block or whatever target is, paint that thing either black. It depends on where I'm shooting and the lighting and everything, but basically a solid color and a contrasting crosshair right in the middle of it. And so that way, no matter what distance it is, it doesn't matter what my pin looks like. I have that reference to where I know exactly where I'm holding. It made a world of difference for me. And just because and now I can, so I'll just take a piece. So I paint it black and I can just take like masking tape and I can put an X over here, or I can put an X over there, or just a big crosshair. I can just just drop them right in there rather than trying to put a dot on top of a dot. Cause there's no way my eyes can, not happening.
That's actually a really good practice. So typically at this point of the year, I am already painted, and then, I'll do the same thing is I'll paint brown and then I'll just a contrast line and I'm shooting for the crease, right?
Correct.
For a month.
Yep.
That's actually what we all should be doing, good eyes or bad eyes any effing way, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that is huge because ain't no chartreuse dots running around on elk or deer anywhere that I've ever seen.
That's right. That's right.
It's actually, like I said, it's kind of a nice situation to be in because it helped me reel my, to a point, arrogance in my ability behind my bow, right? And, I mean, you can't
take it for granted.
Well, yeah, and you couldn't tell me that I could do anything wrong behind it. A slap in the face, some bitch, you could do a lot wrong behind that thing when it's
the good Lord was like, hold my beer.
Yeah. We're gonna reel you in real quick, buddy. Get you prepped up for
and we'll just make a little tweak here and go have fun with that.
I just cognizant of it. We're 2.5 weeks away. As long as I'm cognizant of it, when that bull walks out, hopefully it all comes together there. If not,
if you call him into 7 steps, it doesn't matter.
It ain't gonna matter, right? You can do all the wrong you want, within 30 yards.
Put the housing on that hair. Okay, bam, done.
That's it. That's a dead bull, man. So, man, honestly, I hit record. We've been recording since we started talking about the eyeglass situation. I thought it was pretty cool. I don't even know where to go, dude. So I heard you on Kafaru Cast, and man, not to sound, no homo or nothing. Dude, I was like, man, I'm enamored with this dude. Like, and I just started listening to everything, got on Row Hunting Resources. So there's so much I could delve into with Chris Rowe. I
don't care. Go down a rabbit hole, dude.
I'm going to, because we're approaching elk season, right? I'm going to try and keep it to the straight and narrow, but the human side of what we do is hugely important to me. Hugely important to me. I think we've strayed away from that as a demographic, unfortunately, for whatever reason, and not full on, right? There's a large sect of people that I think have been at it a bit longer and understand the value in it. And that was one of the things that I appreciated on that episode. And I've heard others that you get into that too, was the values that you and Aaron were bringing to the conversation. Right. And I really think that is something worth hearing, especially for, I hate to say it, the vast majority of us that are wrapped up into the BS or the marketing or the things that really don't help
matter
us further. Yeah. I was trying to be nice about it,
but it doesn't. That's the bottom line. I mean, so I don't know. Are you? And I didn't look. Are you a subscriber to the website?
Yes.
Row Hunting Resources.
Yes, sir.
Did you watch that video I did on understanding ideology?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I said I was going to do a part 2 on that. And so a couple things. One, if you say sir again, I'm going to reach to the phone and grab you. We're the same age.
Force of habit.
Exactly.
Force of habit. I call everyone sir, right? That's just
there you go. As long as it's not ma'am, I guess that's all right.
No ma'am.
But no, so on that video, I said, I wrestled with that. I mean, I've been wrestling with that concept. And for those people listening that aren't subscribers yet, there's a video in there. It's 2.5 hours, I think it was, but basically just understanding ideology. How do people think? And how does personality and all these things play out to where, how do you fall on this kind of spectrum of everybody wants to say left versus right, or conservative versus liberal, or these days leftist versus conservatives, or, liberals versus Republicans, or whatever you want to call it. And it just, the conversation is so bastardized that it's just wrong. And so what we find ourselves in a situation is where none of us can get out of our own way, and we all get pigeonholed into our own little value set, and we can't see the world outside of our own little glasses. And so it just becomes this tribe mentality, and we just kind of stovepipe and silo into these I don't know, these different thoughts, and everybody becomes an enemy, and we can't converse anymore. And people kept asking me, like, well, why you want to talk about this? Stick with, and one guy did. He's like, well, you need to stick with what you know, and don't get into this. And I'm like, well, okay, whatever. But the point being is the reason why I wanted to dive into it is I was listening to what was going on with the Wolf reintroduction debate here for Colorado. And and I don't live in Colorado anymore. So it's not I can provide my thoughts, but I'm not a citizen of the state of Colorado. And it's up to the citizens of the state of Colorado to have that discussion for themselves. But I sat there and I listened to different sides of the coin, and I'm like, your arguments, you're not. So the pro-wolf people would make a statement or a pitch, and then you'd hear the anti-wolf people make their pitch. And I'm like, guys, you're talking from two different worlds. You hear the pro-wolf people, and you're like, you guys are batshit crazy, and you're blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? When you talk, they're thinking you guys are batshit crazy, and it goes right over their heads. And so if we're going to have, I don't care if we're talking about wolf issues, controversial wildlife species issues, if we're talking about hunting versus anti-hunting issues, if we're talking about public lands management, hashtag public landowner type issues, I don't care what issues they are. We don't even have to be dealing with people that are anti-us. We can't even have a civil conversation and relate to other people's values within the hunting community. And so the first video on that discussion on understanding ideology was to try to visually, kind of chart it out so where people could see how the ideological spectrum actually lies there. It's a wheel, it's a circle, and we're all in there somewhere. And then part 2 was going to be, okay, how do we play in that circle? Well, I mean, I've been spending the past, at this point now, it's going on 19 months, I think is what it is, and trying to wrap my head around some of that stuff. And every time I think I've got a little bit of something to share, I'll pick up another, discussion from Jordan Peterson, or I'll pick up another discussion from, whether it's Eric Weinstein or Brett Weinstein or any of their guests on their podcast. And it just absolutely bakes my noodle. And so the latest one, I think I'm really close to having my head wrapped around enough to actually do that part 2 when I get back home. I'm in Colorado. I'm traveling for work right now, just wrapping up a project. So that's why I'm sitting in a hotel room. But when I get back to the studio, I think I'm at that point where I think I can intelligently talk about, why we find ourselves in the place we do these days. And Jordan Peterson had an author, researcher author, Ian McGilchrist, wrote a book called The Master and His Emissary. and it's about how the brain is divided. We've got, anybody that even remotely has any experience with biology or anything like that knows that your brain has two hemispheres, the right and left, and each one handles different things. And he goes down through on how the different hemispheres actually process reality. And it is absolutely mind-blowing, because I think when he wrote that book, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, but he's now talking more about it in the fact that what we see with social media is absolutely what we've seen with just these latest okay, so here we are. You're 46, you said?
Yes, sir.
So 49, I'm 49. Yeah, that's all right. I'm 49. And some of these, we're at the age where we remember the first cell phone. We remember having a flip phone. You know what I mean? It used to be this little brick, and then there was like the flip phone, and you're like, holy hell, you've got a flip phone. Yes, I do. And then it became this competition on where you could get this like how small of a little micro flip phone. Okay, well, we have a perspective where when I grew up, the phone was attached to the wall, and we would actually buy the extra long 15-foot springy cord so you could walk around the house. Yeah, so you could walk around the house with the phone was attached to the wall, but the receiver, you could just, wind it around the house, so you, like you said, you could go sit on the stairwell and talk to your girlfriend in some semblance of privacy. So this is where I have a hard time wrapping my head around. I'm old, but that's the case. Is we still have this perspective, and I bring it up because when you look at the younger age class people, just the young adults that are just now entering college, they don't know anything other than an iPhone,
right?
And so we listen to AOC or whoever says our generation has never seen prosperity. And some of us are like, what the hell are you even talking about? You're sitting there with $1,000 iPhone. Who's paying for that bill? Well, mom and dad are, or whoever. Dude, we're talking about a completely different mindset on how people legitimately process, for lack of a better term, reality. How you and I see the world is not the same as a younger generation sees the world. And it is not how they grew up. They didn't have, when we were kids, when we were in school, grade school or whatever, when it was recess, our teachers kicked us outside onto an asphalt, playground. There was a playground that had a swing set and a monkey bars, maybe that centrifugal force, that circular thing that just whipped around in circles.
A lot of black and blue off of them.
yeah, like it was a human salad spinner. It just flung it. Okay, and then you had kickball and foursquare, and you had you had a couple balls, a couple basketballs. Maybe you go out and play. We didn't have a screen that we looked at. Right. And we had to engage one another as individuals, which meant we had to temper ourselves. We had to, if I went to the playground to engage you, I would know who you were, and we would come to some understanding. If I was too much of a dickhead, a loudmouth prick, okay, then you would not pick me for kickball. Or if you were a jerk or a bully or whatever, then the rest of us wouldn't pick you for, our team or whatever. So you had to learn how to communicate and temper yourself, read people, and then go, okay, well, I'm going to keep my mouth shut here, or I'm not going to say that. Or guess what? Billy did say that, and Tommy smacked him right in the mouth. Or what, we had this intraspecific engagement that kind of helped us temper who we were, how we thought, what we said, how we communicated. Now everything is through such social media that, Brett Weinstein talked about this with Peterson in the fact that you have kids growing up that they cherry pick their friends
based on
globally on a phone, which means they never have to have those hard discussions because all their friends agree. I get to cherry pick my friends and I don't have to engage with, that person on the playground. I can be an introvert and sit over here and just sit on my phone. And so you go to any place where you've got a bunch of young adults walking around. I mean, how you see it everywhere. Everybody has just got their face plugged into social media.
Yep.
And social media, we could talk about whether or not social media, is evil or whatever. But from a business model, they're just trying to, if we just want to take it all, just from a altruistic standpoint, their business model is to make money. Well, the best way to make money is to give you what you want so you consume more of it. And so their algorithm just rewards your personal choices, and it just drives you farther and farther down this tunnel of ideology. Yes, we can talk about the proprietors of these social media platforms, and yes, they have the ideological commonality with more of that progressive, postmodern, progressive left, but there's more reasons for that than just politics. But just from a money standpoint, they're trying to make money, so they send you down these little pigeonholes, and all it does is just it's just this gigantic tighter, exactly, tighter and tighter, and you're tighter and tighter within your own echo chamber. And you have less and less interaction with other people to where you have less and less social ability to communicate difficult ideas for a mutual gain. You can just say, piss off, screw you, blocked, I'm getting rid of you, I'm unfriending you, I'm doing this, to where, dude, we're screwed, man, because it's more than just, well, we don't like to talk to you. Based on what I'm learning in that A Master and His Emissary, if you look at how the brain is hardwired and how it trains itself, we're getting to a point where we as a society will not be able to communicate because our brains are hardwiring ourselves to exist in wildly different planes of existence. How somebody on the left, how an animal activist, and I've spent my career life in wildlife dealing with controversial species in wildlife issues and dealing with animal activists. It's part of the reason why I delve into this type of stuff, because you've got to figure out how to communicate. You have to be able to figure out how to communicate. But we're getting to the point where how their brain legitimately processes what they see, what they hear, and what they experience is getting processed and hardwired into a situation where it is a completely different universe than maybe what you and I are. So if we don't take the time to just, we better freaking start spending some time to understand our own value sets, test them. Why? Why do we really hold these things that we value to be true for ourselves? Is it because someone else said and we agreed with them? Or is it because we have some truly articulated, concrete rationale for why we believe what we believe and why we act the way we act and why we associate with who we want to associate with? If we don't understand ourselves, and I'm talking about from just our family history and our genetic proclivities, how we are hardwired from genetics, our learned behavior, our experiences as we've grown up, and what that has done to how we process and think, and how we've developed our and then we move into personalities. If we don't understand those things for ourselves, how in the hell are we going to understand someone else, especially if we don't even know that we should be thinking about these things for ourselves? Because if we think about these things for ourselves, which we should, then by default, we should be thinking about these things for the people we engage. Mm-hmm. What is their family upbringing? What was their life story? What were their experiences growing up? And what is their personality? Personality alone, if we don't take 2 seconds to understand who we're talking to, they're not going to even perceive what we're saying with even any. You might as well be speaking a foreign language and it's going nowhere. And all we're going to do is further isolate, alienate. And it's going to end badly. And I'm just talking about within our sportsman community.
Yeah, that mess is crazy. The interpersonal relationship part of it, right? It almost seems like it's just so far gone. Like there's no turning back, especially when you're on, for the lack of a better phrase, 2 sides of a coin, right?
Yeah.
You can't have an opinion and respect someone else's opinion if their opinion isn't yours. That is batshit crazy to me, right?
Yeah.
That I'm not going to talk to Chris Rowe because his opinion on just this one matter is different than mine. That shit it's insane. And going back to what you said about the schoolyard, think about that, right? If that bully was a dickhead, at some point Chris got fed up, he punched him in the nose, and then the bully was your friend. It didn't matter that you had a disagreement.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm not going to promote violence because, I'll be shunned for that in today's world.
Yeah.
But God damn it, man, there's a few people that need to be punched in the kisser.
Yeah, I remember I'm naturally more of a passive guy. I've got way more patience when I'm not. I'm 6 foot, but I'm very slight build. So I've never been a aggressive guy. And I still to this day remember a one kid in school that was constantly a bully, but he was a bully to the girls. He'd always bully the girls, and anybody weaker, very few kids were weaker than him, but he would always bully the girls. And some of these girls were my friends. And I remember that one time that I just snapped. And I just launched at him. And I remember vividly chasing him out of the cafeteria down this is grade school or no, it wasn't even, this was like 5th grade. I still to this day remember it. Chasing him down the hall, out of the cafeteria, down the hall, and him screaming. And I finally caught up to him, and all I did was just shove him, and he went tumbling. He never picked on a girl again. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, I'm his best friend.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, every time he's like, "Hey, Chris, how's it going?" "Oh, hey." I mean, it was like, who's this guy?
Right.
You know what I mean? But he just didn't have any. When he was younger, he didn't have that check and balance to where it was almost like he was just constantly, it's like a dog. They're going to test the boundaries until they figure, oh, this is a boundary. Well, that's a refreshing thing because their brain is so frantically trying to figure out where they fit in that they're constantly trying to, assessing. Once they know, oh, well, here's a boundary. Oh, well, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Now I know where that is. And it becomes refreshing. And people don't understand that. If we can just, anyway, dude, there's so much. You want to go down that rabbit hole. My gosh.
It's like, I am not promoting violence. Kids punch the bully in the face, right? There is a level of growth for the bully and for that kid that's just fed up. There's a life lesson in that. And now,
correct, but
unfollow, what who's learning from that?
Okay, but here's the problem. We have the mother of that bully was raised by a mother who didn't want that. So now if you stand up to a bully, the person who stood up to the bully is the one who gets in trouble because, well, you shouldn't be doing violence. Well, hold on a minute. He's a bully. Well, but that doesn't mean you can be. You shouldn't be. And then the parents are what. So that's the problem I see right now is we have parents and grandparents that never understood, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but they physically, legitimately did not understand child psychology and basic human development and how interspecific competition and
pecking order.
They didn't understand it. Pecking order. They sheltered so much to where as you become adults, you have no basis of, I don't know. It's dude, this is a 2.5 hour conversation just in itself. Cause I mean, it is. I mean, there's so many things I see today. I watch on social media and I see some of our hunting, quote unquote, social media influencers. And I see what they're doing and they laud themselves as a hero or more importantly, they go and do something stupid. Then they claim that they're a martyr because they were attacked. I'm like, no, you're not a victim.
Right.
You're not a victim. If you're a victim, you're a victim of your own arrogance. You're a victim of your own stupidity and short-sightedness. And now you just put that out there with not understanding what the optic is going to look like for the quote unquote other side. All you did is rally everybody else. Is like, oh yeah, this is blah, blah. It's just like, okay, good Lord. You're not helping the team here, Matt. No. You're not helping us. It did wonders for your social media following, but what is it going to do for the message of us trying to have some conversation with that other side at a later date?
Not a daggum thing.
No.
And honestly, no. It is one of the biggest disservices to our demographic because you're doing exactly what the other side is doing. Just
exactly
in our wheelhouse. That is a bigger hindrance, in my opinion, than stepping outside of that box and saying, okay, I'm not going to, I get it, right? There are people that is their livelihood. But if you truly value our lifestyle, you have to step outside the box and really evaluate what the F you're doing to be a detriment or to help the other side in their never-ending attack. I mean, they've been attacking and planning and long gaming us for 30 plus freaking years, man. And we are just falling victim to it, and we're falling victim to it within our community.
Yeah, I just did a podcast. Well, actually, it's been a few weeks now. I think he's going to release it here with the Stickbow Chronicles, and had this conversation. He's like, one of the examples, he's like, there's a lot of people in the traditional archery community are so sick and tired of all the the compound shooters and blah 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 that they want to have their own primitive hunting season. And I said, okay, well, hold on a minute. What primitive archers are we talking about? The primitive archers that are making their own bow and then they're making their own arrows and napping their own stone heads, or are we talking about the primitive archers that are they use a wooden bow, but they're using carbon arrows and steel, or are we talking about the primitive archers that are shooting a carbon riser with carbon limbs with a fast string? And what primitive are we talking about? And he's like, well, okay, good point. Single string. I'm like, okay, because that's the thing is if we want to start cutting this pie, how small of a piece are we cutting here?
You know what I mean? How a week-long season.
That's exactly it. Well, only those people that have a wood bow. So long bows have their own season, and then recurves can then join in, but only recurves that are wood. But the carbon recurves have their own, and then the compound shooters that shoot bare bow, they can have 2 days, and then it's like, okay, come on now.
It's crazy.
Can we stand together here at some point? Because that's the thing is you hear people all the time say, well, there's a trapping ban, and people are like, I don't care about trapping. I don't trap. So it's not a big deal. Okay. No, dude, it's a big deal, man, because this is what they're going to go for that, knowing that it's the little thing, and then it's going to fall.
Death by
and those guys aren't good. Yeah, those guys aren't going to be there for you anymore. And then guess what? Guess what's number 2 on the activist and anti-hunting chopping block? Bow hunting. Yep. It's predator hunting and predator trapping, and then the next one, bow hunting. Yep. So if you want to ignore your brethren in the sportsman's community because you don't value that or you don't identify with that you're just next. In the more times we fragment and don't we go back to being able to have have communication, understanding one another's value sets, and then being able to see their values within our frameworks where we can identify, we're like, okay, I don't participate there, but I understand exactly where he or she's coming from. I understand how they value it. I understand what their connection to it is. I understand why it's so important to them. And I understand this is no different than me. And so if I don't at least stand up and help, when they come for me, who's going to be there for me? And it's just going to be like you said, a death by 1,000 cuts, but it's going to be quicker than that, I think.
My head, right? We talk a lot of shit about wanting to preserve or conserve our way of life. We talk a ton of mess, right? About what we are going to do or what we're doing, and we get a fucking t-shirt for it, right? I mean, understanding what that attack looks like you're talking about trapping, right? They're looking at method of take, right? And if you look at method of take, they want what they consider to be the most cruel and unusual. So start there and work your way up.
Work your way down.
Matter of time before it's like bye-bye bow hunting, because we didn't support that group in front of us. And that group's not, just like you're saying, they're not going to support it. But I think what happens in our demographic is that we feel like we are different. We are not affected by, you hear people say sheeple, right? We think we are not affected by that. In my head, we're one of the worst groups with it, because we're going to get behind something. And that's I'm polarized on compound right now until a year from now, and it's all trad, and I'm never looking back, and I'm not going to touch that damn compound again. And I don't know why I did it, because I want it harder and I want more challenge. You just fall into the wayside, just like you're saying, tribalism. You said it earlier. As soon as we get into that mindset, and as soon as we forget that we are being influenced by something, we're done. Yeah. We're done. They already got us.
And to what you're saying earlier, you see, I kind of, it gets to the point where you see no way out of it. You sit there and you're like, with the way social media is, the way everything's being played, I don't see us coming back. Well, the reality, though, I think it is. I do see us coming back if more people just from whether we're talking about from the White House on down. I mean, we're going to need to have people in prominent positions showing the example of how it can be done better. So that way people, breaking out of those silos, breaking out of that tribe mentality, and having the ability to step outside of the different silos and then have a conversation on, silo A and silo B, this, ideology A, ideology B. It doesn't matter if we're talking about wildlife stuff, whether we're talking land stuff, whether we're talking politics, but be able to step back outside of it and say, okay, silo A, you guys, I hear exactly what you're saying. You're saying this, 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 and this. Okay. And I'm also listening to the silo B guys, and they're saying this, this, and this, and this. But do you guys realize that this and that are similar, and you have more overlap and common ground here in this 80% or 90%? And what we're disagreeing on is this 10%, but really we're not even disagreeing on the 10%. We're disagreeing on how to get there. So how about we just, we're going to need those leaders, those statesmen, stateswomen that can step back and be, okay, I refuse to play this game. I refuse to allow everything around me to manipulate my emotions, because that's really what ends up getting played. And so we're gonna eliminate. I'm gonna step out of that manipulation, and I'm gonna try to see both sides. I'm gonna try to see where we are common. And then if we're common, okay, put that aside. Okay, so what's the tiny little bit we disagree on? And what's the gist of it? Okay, the gist is this. Let's just take a scalpel and let's go and start cutting away the little thing. Just let's start working on operating on that little thing that we disagree with. Let's not fight about all the other stuff. How can we come to some common ground? How can we understand each other's value sets, identify with one another, essentially, walk a mile in my shoes, stand in my shoes if for a little bit, see the world through their eyes and then say, okay, how can I talk with you within your value set so you can understand me, and then I can understand you, and let's do better. It's going to take people consciously doing this, because it's not what we're normally conditioned to every day within social media. It is that social media and how all the algorithms and how we interact with one another today is literally designed to pull your entire world into a left hemisphere type of where it's emotional, it's black or white, pigeonholed, and that's all there is to it. There's no gray areas, there's no other issues, there's no other contingencies, there's no other awareness, there's no other discernment. It's just nope.
Not my way to you. Yep. So one other thing that I have to put my opinion in on it, right? And you were talking about the younger generation and how they view things. And in my head, there is a lack of gratitude for the things when we were younger, right? You're talking about the playground again, right? You go school shopping, you were lucky to get 2 pair of pants, 3 pair of pants, and you had 1 pair of shoes for the whole freaking school year, right?
Kmart shoes.
Yeah. Now, here was Kmart or Zod. We remember Zodies? Did you guys have Zodies?
I didn't. I was Northeast.
Okay, so we have Zodies out here. It wasn't even Kmart. Zodies was below Kmart.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You go to school with some Zodies shoes. I remember I had them. They had the 2 Velcro straps. Used to cross them sons of guns.
Yeah.
But that was it. Right now, I mean, my kids, 2, 3, 4 pair of shoes. And it's like a week later, hey, I want that. And you're not talking like a $20, $30 pair of shoes, right? $400 or $500 shoes. I was like, what the hell am I going to do with $400 shoes?
Yeah.
That value.
But here's the thing though. And this is what I'm really starting to get my head wrapped around. It's not their fault.
No.
It's not. I understand exactly where you're coming from. And what I will just say is it's not respectfully disagree. I'll provide a different perspective, because it's, you say they're not grateful. Grateful for what? Because an iPhone to them, they had an iPhone. Some of these kids had iPhones when they were in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Their mother or father would give them the old iPhone. They couldn't call out. All they had was one number that they could call home if they needed an emergency. And it makes sense that if we think about this from a parent standpoint, you're always worried about your kid and you always want to make sure they're safe. And now all of a sudden I've got this old brick phone or this old iPhone or whatever, this, iPhone 3 or whatever. It barely even functions anymore, but it still makes a phone call. Well, hell, I can give it to my kid. And if they get in trouble, they can hit one button and they can call me. Okay. As a parent, I'm like, this is a piece of technology that's awesome. I want to give it to my kid. But what does that do? Now that kid, from the earliest memory in their brain, they've always had this phone, this Android or iPhone. An iPhone might as well be the banana that they had for breakfast. There is nothing special about an iPhone other than if it's the new one. Ooh, that's like the new sneakers. But that's all it is. It's not. This isn't, and that's the thing that I think some of us older, especially, and I don't know where the cutoff is as far as age, but that's the problem where we're talking about, it sounds like we're old fogies talking about this generation. The kids back when I was a kid, but it's real because they don't know any better. It's not that you should be grateful for that iPhone. They listen to you and you're like, the hell are you talking about? I'm okay. Yeah, old man. I'm grateful for my iPhone. Like I'm grateful for my water and I'm grateful for my air and I'm grateful that I've got my parents and, whatever, old man, just because this isn't anything special. This is what they've had since they were kids. This is a functional tool that always exists in their world. And so it's like, what are you talking about? Now, if I want the new iPhone X, ooh, that one does this and this, and I could do that, and I get more storage so I can have more friends and more pictures and more TikTok and more this. Okay, but that's just, man, that's the problem, is we're dealing with a completely different world as far as what we perceive in reality and their world and they perceive. And if we don't, I know what this is going to sound like. Okay, let me put it this way. Not everyone gives two shits about what we're talking about. Okay. Number one, if you don't, fine, move on. If you do, if even this incoherent rambling makes some sense to you in some regard, you really owe it to yourself to start spending time listening and learning from people that have literally spent their lives studying how the human brain works and how the human animal interacts with each other over time, like a Jordan Peterson, like a Brett Weinstein, or even Eric Weinstein's a physicist, but he even has start spending some time listening to these people, because it will blow your ever-loving mind, listening to some of these things that you thought were so basic, and then they cut 16 layers down under it, and all of a sudden you realize, oh shit, I've been doing that. I didn't even know why I did it. Now, not only do I understand where it came from and why, now I understand why I'm not having, my spouse or my kids, or I'm not, start doing this is not self-help stuff. I'm not talking about, 5 steps to blah, blah, blah. No, this is about
understanding.
Can I understand myself better? I mean, Jordan Peterson actually has, so I've got my elk stuff online. It's an in-depth elk educational tool. Jordan Peterson literally has understandmyself.com. It is an entire program, and there's several different layers of it. It's literally, you can go through the course and understand how the brain works, how the brain perceives things, how your personality plays into it. Dude, I took his personality course just to understand personality, because I'm an extrovert, my wife's an introvert. And so I'll tell you right now, we've had some times where, boy, oh boy, we butt heads. And, there was a country song that says, it's a tornado meeting a hurricane. You know what I mean? It's just going to end badly. And so we've had some just incredible, just flaming arguments and everything else. But I decided, I was like, well, I've gotten to the point now where this is fascinating to me. I took the understanding personality course. I went through that. Dude, man, you get out the other side. I mean, you get out the other side and you actually take the personality course, and it'll come up with a list. It'll basically, here's who you are. Dude, you want to get freaking not gut punched. You want to be nut punched to where you sitting there, you're reading you. Like, this is where you fall on the spectrum of everyone else in society. You are generally lower here, or you're generally higher here. And here's what this means. And then it starts going down through, and it's like, holy shit, he knows me. Like, oh crap. Yeah, I do that. Oh shit. Yeah, no, that is me. And then the better part about it is, I mean, like, we're talking deep, like things that you never even discuss with your spouse that you know about yourself, but you don't even want to wrestle with. It's like, yeah, that's you. And you're going to do this. And this is how you're going to think. And like for me, procrastinating, when I get into these funky moods, there's a part in there that it says, this type of personality, which I have, is, if you get in these moods, it's amazing how creative you will get to find other things that are more important than actually what the most important thing. If I've got a job to do, if I need to sit down and record a podcast, or I need to sit down and work on videos, it is amazing some days where I'm just not feeling creative and I just don't want to do that. I would rather go clean 16 toilets of a public bathroom
that becomes
than
more important.
It's like, well, I gotta go do this task. I go to the. It's amazing how I can find an excuse that is more meaningful to me than actually what I ought to do. Now, this is where other people like Jocko and other people talk about discipline. Sure, you could talk about discipline, but the proclivity of a personality to do these things. Well, you start going through this course, it will just rip the calluses off your eyes about who you are. But then the thing that was just fascinating to me was, and oh, by the way, if this type of personality is married to like this type of personality, then you guys are probably going to have some arguments. Like, for instance, like if you're cleaning the house, your spouse is probably going to get mad at you because you didn't clean the house, when if they had just waited another day, you'd have cleaned the house because your threshold is here, their threshold is here, or vice versa. Your threshold is just a touch higher than theirs. And so you were going to wait, you were going to clean it. You were on your way to clean it, but you were just going to be a little bit delayed. They had already surpassed it. It's like, oh my word. So not only did he go down through and cut through who I was, he just like through me, just harpooned my wife. And it was like, oh shit, now I understand. And then you understand how they think and how they perceive and what their entire worldview looks like. You're like, no wonder I have arguments with my spouse. To where you take it out, you're like, no wonder I can't sit in a commission meeting with another person over here that, says I'm a sportsman, but, wants to, they want to end all oil and gas development on public lands, or they don't want that. You pick your poison where they're at odds against you in your ideological set. Dude, if you don't even understand yourself,
how are you going to,
you can't. But once you do understand yourself, it just blows all the doors of communication wide open. You were like, oh, I know who you are. Okay. Now I understand who you are. Well, I talked in that video that Thomas Sowell, A Conflict of Visions, on how the brain is hardwired. That book in itself blew my mind, to where you get through that. You can have between those two things, you can have a conversation with somebody in 10 minutes and know exactly who they are. And the beautiful thing about that is now you know what their currency is. And I'm not meaning that to manipulate them. I'm meaning that from a standpoint of now you can kind of understand what their value set is. And if you have the ability to identify their value set, empathize with that value set, and then be able to put yourself in that value set and have a conversation, do you know how just instantaneously captivating you are to those people? And you pull them into where they're like, okay, I can talk with you. And I want it. Okay, well, I can see your point of view. Okay, well, I know I said these things and I guess I didn't mean that. I understand what. All of a sudden, now here we come. We're coming together now rather than polarizing apart. We just need more people within the community, ubiquitously across all the communities, to commit to, if you're curious about this type of stuff, commit to starting to learn this stuff for yourself, because it will bleed over in everything you do. And I think people see that change. They get to witness the change and experience, and it becomes even more meaningful. Do you follow Nicole Arbour?
Yes.
How long have you followed Nicole Arbour?
Not very long, and I think you have brought her up before. Is probably where I found her.
She's incredible. Now, okay, I know all you guys are listening and gals out there. Yeah, she's smoking hot. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. The thing about Nicole is she started as a ditzy hot blonde that was a comedian, that she was on social medias playing with her body and her image and her jokes and her ditziness. And it was just eye candy and funny. Look at where she is now. Her following and her influence. And the beautiful thing about it is she has grown personally over time, but she's shared that intellectual, emotional growth over time. And she's just massive. I mean, like, as in not only her followership, but the impact of just how she can message and reach across every demographic, if you want to talk about it. Those are the type of people we need more and more of, that are going to say, I love you all. I'm going to listen to you all. I've got my value sets and I've got my beliefs, and I'm going to stick with them, and that's fine. I'm going to listen to you. And if you've got some good points, I'm going to lift you up, and I'm going to make sure everybody hears your points. Even though I may not like all the other stuff, I'm going to lift you up for this one because that's a good message. If you're going to be a dumbass, I'm going to set you back down. But if you got a good message, I'm going to lift your voice up. And then, oh, by the way, given the fact that I lifted you up because you had a good message, I'm going to reach over here on this other side. I'm going to lift them up because they had a good message too. Don't be a dumbass. Don't be a hypocrite. Let's listen to good messages. And it's amazing how much communication can have across that table. And it's just one example of somebody that started off on a platform, and then you watch their growth and development intellectually and emotionally, and just how powerful that transformation can be for so many other people, because she's influencing a lot of people to be better. That's just one example, but
there's a level of honesty that you have to be willing to have with yourself if you're going to go down that road, right? Because
that's a fair point.
Not to say that it can go very, very bad, but it can go to the point where you ignore it forever because you're not ready to be honest with yourself about who you really are.
That's a fair point, right? Brother. That's a fair point.
Without that, I don't care what you do, right? Without that, in any facet of life, it's all for naught. It is, and I'm a lot of things, and I have no problem admitting to anyone those things that I am or my shortcomings, right? And I'm not saying I'm Nicole Arbor, but I think that's one of the reasons that I'm accepting of other opinions, right? Is because I know who I am. I know where my value set is and what is important to me. But I'm always willing to listen, and I'm always going to respect what you have to say, right, wrong, indifferent in my head. But you got to be honest with yourself first.
You've got to have a level of emotional maturity, because that's the problem. And I'll be the first to raise my hand, is part of the reason why I have not been putting out the level of content that I did in the past, is because you start going down this road of learning, like true. Yes. Okay, I've got to get out of my pigeonhole. I've got to step outside of what I think I believe, and that's a big one. There's things that you believe, and then if you're really, really honest about yourself, there's a lot of things you think you believe, right, that you've not been tested on. And if you have the emotional strength and maturity to say, okay, well, I want to step outside, I want to test that a little bit. You may find some things that you're like, man, I'm not who I thought I was there for a minute. And you're going to have to come to grips with it.
Yep.
And that's the thing, is it's not, you're going to go through some really uncomfortable periods, but if you do that, I can tell you, you're going to come out the other end a hell of a lot better as an individual. That and there's a lot of people that talk about, I mean, whether you're talking about Hand to Man podcasts, there's so many people talking about discipline and personal development and blah, 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 blah. Part of it has to do exactly what you said. You've got to be willing to risk being uncomfortable in what you don't know. And that's what I start going down these rabbit holes on top. Yeah, that's the thing, is the more you learn, the more you learn, the less you know. So the less you know, you're like, shit, I need to know more. And so you start digging into that, and you're like, well, goddamn, I really don't know. Right. And so you start going this spiral. That's how I do. I get into this mode of where I'm just all in on, I got to get my head wrapped around things before I actually talk about it. Hence the reason why it's been so long.
Hence no part 2 yet.
Correct. And I was already, literally, you want to talk about, so for that one, I had them both. Ready to go. I did the first one, and that was 2.5 hours, and I was losing my voice. I was like, all right, I'm going to come back tomorrow. No joke. That next day is when Eric Weinstein and Jordan Peterson had their conversation, and Eric Weinstein brought up this concept of how children have been brought up in social media, which has curtailed the normal social development skills that kids used to have. And he went down. All he did was just pull on this one little thread, and it just unraveled everything I had set for part 2. And I'm like, shit. Okay. So now I need to understand this. And then it was right about the time I started wrapping my head about what was social media and how that was interacting. Then Ian McGilchrist gets on there and he brings up the left brain and how that, or the left hemisphere and what it does and how it and he's got it lined out in the book. Anyway, it's not a coffee table book. It's like Thomas Sowell's book. It's not an easy book, but it just will bake your noodle. And you're like, son of a bit. Now I really don't know what the hell I've got it. Now I've got to go back to the drawing board. Now I had pieces, I had parts, and they were accurate, but I didn't have the connectivity. And I'm not even articulating things well right now. I don't have my notes in front of me, but I mean, I don't know. I geek out on this stuff because I do enjoy learning and it does kind of get me going. The big thing I think for a lot of people that might not geek out on this thing is as much as you and I might do. If you want to have a better, how about we do this? If you want to have a better relationship with your spouse and you want to have a better relationship with your extended family and you think that should be important to you, which it should, just step out of your comfort zone and do some of the stuff and just try there before you jump into social media world and political world and sportsman politics and all it. Start small and just see where it goes. Yep. Yeah. Just see where it goes because it's going to blow you away on how effective some of this stuff can be, man. But you're right, man. You've got to have that level of emotional maturity in order to be willing to take that first step.
It'll blow your entire world up if not.
Yeah. And this is where I will disagree with those people. Oh, it's discipline. You just need to do it. I don't know. Because if you're not ready for it, doesn't matter. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to go down this road. I'm going to try. If you're not ready for it to see what's on the other side, man, you could most of the time it's just going to be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's just going to go the other way. And you're just going to pigeonhole yourself even more. And it's just,
south real fast. I mean that, and again, that, having that discipline, can you sustain that? Right. I mean that,
it's got to be meaningful.
Yeah. It has sorry.
It's going to have to be meaningful to you to want to do this. Cause it's going to be uncomfortable for a little bit of part of it. It's going to be uncomfortable. There's a saying, and it really resonated with me not too long ago of, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's not the other way around. You can, and it's funny. I remember back to my college classes that I was forced to go to. It was part of the checklist of classes I had to take. And I'm like, this class sucks. And now I look back and I'm like, I hated every bit of it. I went through and I studied and I passed the tests and I did fine on my grades because I had to. And that's just what I did. But I didn't internalize shit as far as through it. Now I'm going back and revisiting old stuff because now it is relevant to what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh man, I really need this. And I wasn't ready to consume that information back then. Now I am. And so this is where it's going to be on you of saying, yes, this is meaningful to me. I want to be able to communicate. I want to be able to understand other people so that way I can communicate with them better, that I can understand them better. And hopefully, not even so that way, we talked about, within sportsman politics, I used to get pissed off at conservatives, quote unquote, or Republicans, quote unquote, more than I got pissed off about the leftists, or not leftists. They always piss me off. Liberals, if you will, or Democrats, because the left and the Democrat side